Hi, welcome back to Shelf Starters. My name is Rosie and this is my mum, Kate.
Hi.
For anyone who's new.
Hi, Rosie.
Today, we're continuing with our Norton Anthology challenge, going a bit Irish this time with the Táin, which is an Irish folk legend thing.
You got the original. I mean, not the original.
I got the full version. So the Norton Anthology just has a snippet.
Yes.
But I read the whole thing and I liked it. I liked parts of it. I would say overall, I thought it was quite funny in parts.
Hilarious. In actual
yeah. Some of it is just like, what? It's just really weird.
Yeah.
But in that way that kind of makes you laugh out loud. So that part was good. But I did feel like there were a lot of really repetitive moments in the middle, especially.
Yeah.
So that kind of lost me after a while. And there's a lot of violence as well.
Huge amount of violence. That's and then you slam something into something and then the head fell off and that kind of thing.
Some really, really violent moments, which it's not really my thing so much. Like, I do like it when it's, contributes to the action, and that's the thing. Like, I didn't mind it with Beowulf, for example, and the other things that we've seen, but this got a lot more graphic, and I found it really weird how that contrasted so heavily with the humor that I don't know, is a bit grating for me. It's possibly not my style so much. I did like it, but those parts I think were not so great for me.
Yes. I found the actual constant dialogue, with very little narration in between, essentially. So it would be one line, then one line, then one, back and forth and back and forth. I actually found that a little bit boring.
Yeah, I think maybe the pacing in general was a bit of an issue in this one, but that it was just the kind of the style of the time, I think. Yeah. So we should say what it's about. Do you want to
quite simplistic?
Give it
yes.
summary?
Okay. So it is. I think we start with the setting. So we're in the north of Ireland, and we're in. So my understanding is, I mean, my Irish history is not fantastic, but my understanding is that Ireland was broken into 5 provinces. I think.
Don't ask me. That sounds right.
What I read. Anyway, so this is about kind of a feud, I guess, between 2 provinces, where basically the king and queen, or the queen, essentially it's about the queen really, from Connacht, who has heard about a cow in
a bull.
Ulster. A bull, or a cow bull, in Ulster, and she wants to have it. She wants it as almost.
So the reason she wants it, and this is the part I actually like the most, which is the very beginning.
Yes.
Was she's with her husband, so it's Maeve and Alil, the king and queen, and they're in bed. They call it the pillow talk scene or something like that.
Yes, they do.
They're in bed and they're having an argument about who is richer. And so they can't work out like who brings more to the marriage, basically, in terms of money.
Yeah, they're all about money and they're all about celebrity. Yeah.
And so they decide, the only way that we're going to be able to resolve this issue is if we actually itemize every bit of our wealth and compare. And so they have servants bring in all of their jewels, armor, everything that they own into this room, and they mark it off against each other.
Yes.
And the one area where they are not equal is a bull. So her husband, the king, has some special bull and she doesn't have anything that compares, and that's the one area where she falls short. So she decides, and her husband supports her, I guess, that they're just going to go after a bull and get her the equivalent of this special bull that they've heard about.
But it's significant that they choose Ulster, isn't it? Because there's some sort of history there in terms of the provinces. So yes,
I think there are tensions between them.
Yes, and then but they've heard of this really fantastic bull. So she has, and so she's made this decision that she should have this bull.
And so they go on this raid. So this translates the Toynbee Coolin.
Yeah.
Is also known in English as the cattle raid of Cooley.
Yes.
So they go,
and the star of the show, the star of the story, is a boy.
17-year-old boy.
Yes, whose name is Cú Cullen. Is that right? And that apparently, because I don't know how to pronounce things correctly, but apparently Cuchulainn, and that means hound. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or the coup part does?
No,
Something?
the Cullen part. I
The
think.
whole thing. Oh, the color.
Yeah.
One of the parts.
And
Okay.
this guy, this 17-year-old, is basically like the Hulk. Like he's actually like a monster in terms of his size.
His superhero powers.
Yes.
He's very strong, very, very skilled in battle.
Yes.
And so the extract that we get in the Norton is going back on his childhood deeds, and it talks about all the things that he surprised people with in terms of his skill and I guess
power,
warrior abilities, from the age of 7. And so this is just a section of it, but in the book it's so long and repetitive. So I mean by there's parts that are repetitive, where it goes through all these different things, and then there's that refrain of is it any, I'm paraphrasing obviously, don't remember this by heart, is it any wonder that, you know, since a boy of 7 could do all these things then, that, you know, a 17-year-old now is
doing this
great. Yeah, exactly. And that just repeats after like several scenes of things that he did as a child.
But in this Norton's edition, this little snippet, what I think the most interesting part about Cullen is not so much his superpowers and the way he can just transition himself into this massive hulky thing like some sort of cartoon character, but it's more all the little stories about him being a young boy, starting at the age of 7, I think it was 7, about him being told all the time, look, the thing is, if you want to go for this, then you might have a very reduced lifespan. Or, you know, if you want to do that, then this means you get, you know, you don't live that long. And I don't care. I'll do what it takes.
Anyway.
I just want to be the best. Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's kind of it really reminded me a bit of that Dr. Faustus kind of idea. Like,
I try to like,
I don't mind what I have to sacrifice. I'll do whatever it takes, because that's what I really want. You know, like to be famous. I want to be famous. He just wants to be the best.
Which he definitely achieves. He's definitely famous.
Yeah.
I found it really hard. This is something I actually noted down when I was reading it. I feel like you're supposed to love him. Like he is the hero of the story.
Yes.
You're supposed to bond with him. But I found because he was constantly committing these awful acts of violence.
It's pretty hard to like him.
I was like struggling. And he does it with such ease as well.
Oh,
the only time he really
he's a bit thuggy. Oh, not a bit thuggy, he's a lot thuggy, but thug in the sense of there don't seem to be too many deep thoughts. You know,
except when, and this is not in the anthology snippet, but in the part that was really where it got interesting again after all of these excessive battles, which we haven't really properly explained either, that they're one-on-one. So they come to a deal where he's going to fight each warrior one by one from Maeve's army. So it's not like, you know, this one boy against everyone. It's each day he faces a new person, and then he also does some guerrilla warfare at night, things like that. Throws things. I think he shoots stones at them and things. Anyway,
all the while everybody's saying the best thing about it is, isn't it amazing because he's so young?
Yeah.
So it's like a child soldier. Aren't we proud that this boy can do this? And it's a bit horrible. Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it really, you know, is good in a modern age. I don't think it really survives.
The values don't quite work for us, sure.
But there is one part that is quite moving where he is forced to go up against his two of his relatives, sort of like his foster brother and his foster father. And that's where it gets a little bit moving, because they don't want to fight each other, but they have to. And there is a part where, you know, he wins. So he kills them.
There's no surprise there. He never loses. There's no surprise. Yeah.
So, and then that's quite upsetting, I guess. But other than that, I found it hard to connect with him in general.
And then there was the whole layer of weird, you know, patriarchy, sexualizing, objectifying women in the so obvious way, it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, all the way through. But
but I like, you know, the part, and send naked women to meet him, and then
that's when he's like 7.
Yeah. Correct. And then, oh, yep, they did that. Then they stripped their breasts bare and move on. Yeah. And like it's just no drama.
And later on, there is a part as well where, if I try and remember exactly what the situation is, I think it's one of Maeve's warriors is bribed to fight Cuchulainn if they will be able to marry Maeve's daughter if they fight. So there's like a whole bribe thing there, and like Maeve's daughter does not really get any say, really. Or they just assume we have it. And then there's a few bits with people sleeping with each other and things like that that are kind of just glossed over.
So basically, lots of violence and sort of sexual degradation, pretty much.
But I think in terms of what's actually important and why it is included in the Norton is probably a few bits of style that have then gone on. So what we haven't mentioned with why he's hulky is he gets given these superpowers from a mythical kind of supernatural creature thing, which I think we think is like early version of Morgana.
Yes, that's right.
So it's linking it. It's going to go into the Arthurian legend stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Right. It's a precursor for the Arthurian legend.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when you go, like, we've been to Ireland, and when you do go there, there is all those fairy mythical things that is very much part of the culture.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting to see. The other thing that's definitely part of the culture is the land. And a lot of this, another part that I found extremely repetitive in this was listing place names, not just like listing the names, but everywhere it's like, and this is why this is called this. So it like kind of deviates into a little side story about, and then we called this hill this because it links back to this story in like mythology, which I imagine is really interesting for what would have been interesting for maybe for people at the time. It sort of felt like, and this is just me imagining a situation that I have no idea if it's based in fact at all, but it feels like if this was told orally and you had a big group of people listening, it feels like they needed to call out where everyone was from. You know, it's like when rock stars are like, do we have anyone from Australia in the crowd?
Let's hear it for.
It kind of felt like that to me with like, let's list as many places as we possibly can and see if, you know, people know them. I don't know. So that was, that part I think is
audience participation is a thing. Yeah.
I think that maybe, that would be more interesting in an oral format, because otherwise it just feels really random when you're reading it in text. But I have read some other Irish myths and things like that, and I've seen that happen across Irish myths and legends at this time as well. So I think that is just something that is very important to their style. The other bit of style that I wrote down here was that there was a mix of poetry and prose. Which is apparently a thing in early Irish writing. And the other, like, I guess it feels a bit random. Like, it's not like in Shakespeare where you can really tell, like, there's a purpose when prose is used.
It's not it doesn't divide people according to their class or nobility or
I don't think so. It just felt really like sometimes it
just appears.
Maybe it's I didn't notice. And then there were these other things that I think is has a name. It's called Roscada, which means rhetorics, and I found an example here. You see this, where it's like kind of split in two, like two little columns.
Lining.
And it just does not make much sense.
No,
like it's really hard. They just feel like random words that don't really flow together.
It's not. Is it meant to be call and respond or something like that, or no?
Like maybe, but it feels very disjointed. It kind of is like that. Which was the poem that we were reading, where it was like, it feels a bit incoherent. It's a bit like that. And apparently it is just it's unpunctured, syntactically ambiguous. Not really sure why. It might be deliberate archaisms, so like it's supposed to sound weird, but I'm not really sure. Like I don't really know what purpose that's serving in the story. No, it just felt like a sort of random.
Well, it's almost like just a playfulness with language, I suppose. And that is kind of culturally interesting, I think.
It did feel a bit experimental.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a really weird moment at the end.
Yes.
Where Maeve goes off to urinate.
Oh, that is weird.
Yeah. And then Cuchulainn comes across her, and it's like he could have killed her, but he lets her go.
Yeah.
It was just such a random detail to add in, and also the way that it's translated, at least in here, made it sound like she was on her period, not that she was urinating.
Yeah.
But then it comes.
I've read that somewhere else, and no, I have read that, and yeah, to do with the whole cycle of life and the sanctity of womanhood. Yeah.
I think I wrote down the quote that made me, the reason why it made me think that she was on her period. Oh yeah, because it said, then Maeve got her gush of blood.
Yeah, that is what that means. And
but then it never refers to it as that after then. Then it talks about urinating specifically.
Odd.
So yeah, so I thought that was weird and strange detail to add in.
Well, yes, it was written by a monk, wasn't it? I think.
Well, it would have been at least transcribed by a monk.
No, yeah, transcribed by a monk. So the thing is, you don't know that the monk didn't add
Maybe
that
he didn't understand.
And then went, "Ooh, I think I need to redact that and turn it into urinating because I don't."
Yeah, could be. It was very weird, but I thought, if I would say I did like it. It's not like I didn't actually enjoy it. That part of it really weird.
It wasn't difficult to read either.
No. Yeah, easy to read. Just had parts that were quite boring because they were quite repetitive.
Oh, I definitely.
But then other parts that were hilarious and fully action-packed. I would just say, probably the pacing was probably the issue here. But the parts that I really liked were the parts that felt more like the common human experience. So the beginning with the husband and wife arguing, I found that really fun. Yeah. And I liked the
that's
part
a bit of an interesting argument, isn't it? Who brings more to the marriage? You or
me?
I mean,
and calling it pillow talk even. I mean, that's
like we should have done a prenup because I came with all these things, you came with these things. We should even that out and organise the whole thing into a prenup before we go. That it very much did kind of have a flavour of modern celebrity and modern materialism. That's kind of interesting because it's a long time ago, obviously, and it did. It had that kind of glitzy ring to it, which I wouldn't have put with Irish writing at all.
No.
So kind of
Well,
surprise.
So I guess maybe some themes that are common today that still are relevant, but maybe just the execution was not particularly timeless.
Do you think that this competitiveness between the husband and wife, I mean, that's quite a modern concept, really?
Yeah.
So,
well, Maeve certainly seems like a very strong character. I thought she was really interesting.
Woman. Yeah. So,
it's just I think it didn't focus on her enough almost.
No, I would have liked more. Yeah. And I guess the problem is the Hulk doesn't have enough going for him. Not way, or not.
And I think this is part of the Ulster cycle, so it's only one story out of like all of the myths and legends, and maybe you have other references with Cuchulainn elsewhere,
and he's more human, perhaps.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
not
really deeply interested in the superheroes, generally speaking.
He was a bit like Hercules, though, and like I would be interested in stories about Hercules.
Had more going on, like in the telling. Whereas this guy, yes, I agree, it's only a snippet, so we don't know. But there might be a whole heap more to him, but it doesn't feel like it because he just keeps saying over and over again, "I'll take it. If that's what it takes to make me the best and most famous, I'll take it." And it's like, well, it's not a lot of thought about other people or any real sensitivity or depth, and I don't like that very much. It's not enough.
And he still did kill his half brother and stuff. So it was fun. I wouldn't say it's my favorite myth.
No.
It would be interesting to look in. I'm sure we'll come across probably a lot of myths and legends and things through the anthology, but that's another interesting thing that we could do at another time. Look at some different myths around the world and see which ones we enjoy the most.
Actually, that would be cool. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just assuming you're probably going to like the Greek ones the most, but would be interesting to see some different ones and also comparisons between them because I think quite a few are quite similar.
Yes.
even across cultures.
Look, and obviously the whole romantic tradition, this is a setup for that. This is kind of a forerunner. Lyrics, Rosie, did you read the lyrics afterwards?
Yeah, and I don't also have much to say about those.
Well, that's because they're tiny. And they're tiny. And they're hilarious also, really. I mean, so
I like the one about the cat.
Yes, where we compare what the cat looks, the whole kind of essence of being of the cat, which equals catching a mouse, versus the essence of being of the scribe, which is gaining knowledge, acquiring knowledge.
Yeah.
And
so the scholar
catching the mouse and the hunt and the whole game playing that goes on in order to get the mouse is kind of like this metaphor for
like the hunt for knowledge.
Yeah.
But I thought it was quite cute because it was like the relationship between a man and his cat, and you can kind of imagine a little scribe in his study with his cat.
Yeah,
it was quite a wholesome kind of image.
It was very wholesome and very and very simple, very, very simple.
Yeah.
No, that was
the next couple, the Scribe in the Woods and the Lord of Creation. Didn't really have much to say about them either. Like, obviously, the Scribe in the Woods is about connecting with nature and maybe linking nature to knowledge.
Well, yes, and I wondered if it was, the significance of the two birds, the blackbird and the
cuckoo.
And the cuckoo. So the blackbird being like a spirit messenger, perhaps.
And cuckoo.
And I think there's something I read about blackbirds being associated with trust and saying,
oh, really?
Yes, and saying, listen carefully and listen carefully, and it's about kind of trust. And then I was thinking that maybe that was equating the scribe's relationship with God,
listen,
is
the word.
Yeah. And then I read something about the cuckoo being a symbol of a moment, a big event that's coming in your life. So
like heralding
something. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was heralding, like, he was going to have this kind of moment with God.
Revelation. Yeah.
The Lord of Creation, well, gosh, not a lot to say there since it was just 1.5 lines.
Yeah, one sentence. Literally, I don't have anything to say about that. It's just saying we should adore the Lord.
The wonder. Yeah. And then the last one, my hand is weary with writing, was just almost, I think, it was just a literal thing saying it's exhausting being a scribe.
Yeah. And have you heard of that before? Because I have heard that expression before, my hand is weary with writing.
Yes, I have. But I don't know.
I'm not sure where. I'm like, did I see it on like some sort of, those like posters and mugs and things? Like, is it written on something like that?
Something. Yeah.
I've definitely heard it before.
Like a university.
I can imagine it would be exhausting being a scribe because my hand gets exhausted these days writing. We never write anymore.
No, it is exhausting work. It's you've got to have muscle training for to hold the pen that long, and they were holding whopping great quills.
Yeah.
So it was exhausting.
Yeah, so like physically exhausted.
Yeah.
Mentally as well.
Yeah.
I imagine would be quite hard because something that I guess we'll come up into later is all the different dialects that would have existed at that time as well. So trying to understand and write it down in a uniform way.
Yes.
Would be interesting.
Yeah.
And especially when it's getting into like things written in English for the first time, where they would have normally been written in Latin. Yeah. I imagine there is some mental exhaustion there too, but it does seem like it's mostly physical in this snippet.
Yes. But anyway.
I mean, it's got good imagery, but like green-skinned holly, colour of the ink.
Exactly right. Lovely. Yeah, great imagery. Very nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, very simplistic, really. I mean, I'm not sure that the collection of early Irish lyrics really is teaching us that much about the time. That's why I sort of, for the first time in the Norton, I'm questioning why this is in there.
It's almost like we have to acknowledge the existence of, and also the Celtic language. I mean, it is a really key influence, obviously.
Yeah, but then I just feel like there must be so much more in Irish literature. This is all we got from Ireland. We got the Táin and these random lyrics, and I feel like there must be so much more that we're not getting because they chose to put in these random lyrics.
It's because it was. Is it because it was very much only, it was so an oral tradition, such an oral tradition, and maybe they just simply didn't write it down. I don't know.
Yeah. Or they felt like we've already got some, because I know that there is a lot of mythology that we do have, but maybe they felt like we've already got the mythology, we need something slightly different, and they don't have lyrics, I guess. But I don't know, I feel like it can't possibly be a shortage of things, because I know that there are
it seems odd, doesn't it,
books with Irish things in there. But anyway, and also I also thought it was a bit random that we've got an Irish section, but we don't have Welsh, Scottish.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
I don't know. It felt like a bit of a random selection at this point.
Anyway, it's interesting that we've got it. We've had a look at it.
Yeah.
And then great news, we're getting to the Arthur.
We're done. We're done with Anglo-Saxon, and we're moving on to Anglo-Norman.
Yep. Yay.
Which is cool. And yes, next week it's going to be the myth of Arthur's return, which is really cool. So we're getting a few different versions of the same story, which I think is really interesting. Really and cool. That'll be cool to see the difference in style between the three different authors.
That'll be really good. I'm looking
and how the myth evolves over time.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of Arthurian myths going on at the moment. I've bought a few different like selections and things. I'm going to save Le Mort d'Arthur for the end, because I think that we do have it later on in the anthology, so I won't read that one yet. Okay. But I've got a few other things that I'm going to supplement this with, because there's a lot out there about Arthur. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, that'll be good. That'll be really good.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, let us know in the comments below if you have read the Táin or any other parts of the Ulster side.
If there's more to be read that is kind of more, that is richer, because
we want more, basically.
Well, there was promise that this was going to be rich, and then I think it didn't quite deliver. So it'd be nice to hear if other people have got some other suggestions. Yeah.
Or also what you thought of it. If you got anything else out of it that we might have missed in our reading, please let us know below as well. I think that'd be really interesting.
Hey, Rosie, and what have you read that in contemporary? Have you read anything good that you can recommend?
I am getting back into thrillers now for some lighter reading, which I think has been much needed, because I've been reading a lot of classics, I've been reading a lot of Shakespeare.
Yes,
a lot of things like that. And Dante, I'm almost at the end of Purgatorio now, so I needed to take a break and go for some lighter, kind of easier reading. And I had a great read, The Pact. By Sharon. I don't know, I'll put the author name down below. But yeah, it was really gripping. It was about teenagers who live in Oxford, who are like super bright, like elite students, and they're all probably going to get into Oxbridge, and they've just finished their A-levels and are in that like kind of partying mode, and they do something, like they dare each other to do something really, really awful.
Oh, it sounds like
has horrible consequences.
Rosie, it sounds like
it's a little bit like that, but they're younger, and it's more about how it then affects, then jumps several years and shows how it affects their whole lives. Basically they all committed this thing
together.
And then one of them goes down for it. They agree to only pin it on one person so that they don't ruin all of their lives.
Oh my God.
And so then it's about how it affects them all later.
And is it about how they choose that person? Do they go into that? Like
that person volunteered but said, if you let me go down for this, then you're all going to owe me a massive favor at the end of it. And so then it's about when we get to that point, what happens from there. And it was really great. Yeah, I really liked that. And then now I'm reading one that's also a thriller, but it's called Rewind by Catherine Ryan Howard, I believe. And it's jumping back and forth in time. So it goes like fast forward, rewind, stuff like that. So consequences, I really don't know what's happening.
No, I'm
enjoying it, but I have no idea what's going on.
It does not sound relaxing. So I've read a little bit more of, well, I haven't. I've read a tiny bit more of this, The Dickens Boy.
Oh, is that good?
I quite like it. And also it's a bit of a change for me. I've quite like, a totally male story. And an interesting one, because it's the father and son relationship. So it's essentially, I've got this one son who's not academic. He's really doing badly at school. He's 16 years old. He's just going to be an embarrassment. And so what should we do with a boy like that in the 1800s in England? I know, let's send him to New South Wales, which will be, and make a man of him. Like, send him off, and hopefully he'll be a long way away and not embarrassing. And also he can be turned into a proper man by somebody else somewhere else. So that was, and apparently it's like he was the 10th child. So it's Thomas Keneally, Australian writer, who's actually an Irish Australian writer, right? And interestingly, he loves his historical fiction, Keneally, and so he's taken the idea of this, the youngest son, of one of 10 children of Dickens, and imagined what would it be like for Dickens to have a child who'd never read any of his books and who was not bookish at all. How would that relationship go? So out of that, he's got a whole story, but the boy's perspective. And so far, I just feel deeply sorry for him, the poor thing. So
sent to New South Wales, that seems very extreme. What's he going to do there?
And it's really interesting because he's going to go and live on a station in New South Wales, which would be the same as living in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Basically, he's sort of a bit like the whole Pip, Great Expectations, Magwitch kind of vibes. That's what you get from this. It's like, and then in fact, the brother, I think it's his older brother, accompanies him from Plymouth to New South Wales, but he's just got to dump him there, like take him on the trip, the horrible, and yes, but then they're having a conversation, he's having a conversation, and somebody says, I think it's the brother, has it ever occurred to you that the whole story of Pip is kind of modelled for you? That story's for you. But of course, he hasn't read Great Expectations.
So he's no idea.
Yeah, he's like, I don't actually know what you're on about because I haven't read the book. And that's the problem. So he's got this terrible relationship with his father. So I'm quite enjoying reading that because it's an interesting concept, because, of course, that's a very tried and true story, isn't it? Of a son feeling he doesn't measure up to his father, especially this father, who was obviously so famous, not just for the printed word, but he went. He was
to tell them out loud.
Tours, and he
was famous in his own time.
Like So not the first, but one of the great early book tour.
Yeah, because he did readings and he performed his book.
And he was a star wherever he arrived to read. And this poor boy is like, and I'm not interested in that, and I'm kind of nobody. I've got nothing. And that's a real, that story is quite a familiar one, isn't it?
Yeah, and that sounds really good. Thomas Keneally also wrote Schindler's Arc.
He did.
And I have read that.
Which the film Schindler's List was based.
Yeah. I have read that.
Yeah, he's a great writer. He's a good writer. It's a great story. He's a character as well. He very much.
Is he?
Very much. He's a raconteur, and yes, he's a real character. So I thought I'd give it a whirl. And the cover is beautiful. The cover is that I'm sure that's got to be a Sydney Olman style painting.
So that is different to the cover that we have in the UK. It looks like.
I'll tell you what that cover is. Surely it tells me on the front here. It says, it's a Drysdale. That's what I thought. The cricketers. No, very. That's a really Australian painting, 1948, I think it is. And the colours. Nice. See that the beautiful orangey tones. The dust. And cricket, so it's good. So far, so good. So I'm enjoying that very much. And it's a bit of a departure because I've been reading a lot of kind of women's writing. So
I just finished the Women's Prize for Fiction, all of the long list, which is good. I know I liked it, but overall, I think it's not my favorite year.
No,
which is weird to say, and maybe it's because the ones that I think are the best I actually read last year. So the ones I've been reading more recently are not the ones that I think are the best necessarily on the long list. But I feel like in previous years I've had a lot more like love overall for the whole long list than I have this. Even though there were some really great books in there, don't get me wrong. Like I did really enjoy a lot of them. My overall impression is that it wasn't as strong as previous years, which I don't think many people are thinking. So maybe that's just me. But So it's good, good to do something different.
Well, that's what I thought. I just need to mix it up a bit.
Shall we leave it there for this week?
Let's hear from everyone else, hopefully.
Yep. What are you reading?
Yep.
Let us know what you're doing.
Got anything to say on the Irish ones? That would be really interesting to hear. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll get into our mode of King Arthur.
Yeah, and let us know if you have been reading along in the Norton, what you're enjoying the most so far, how you're going with the challenge as well. We'd love to hear from you. All right. Thanks so much for watching. See you again next week.
Happy reading.
Bye.